Hi everybody, this is the second video of how you would write your embedded assessment for writing an analysis of a humorous text. I would say that you have read the text by now and that you've made some decisions about what were the humorous elements in it, what was the universal truth, and what was the level of comedy that the piece of text represented, and then why. Okay, so I think you should have all of those done, and then I'll talk to you about how to structure your essay. So here's what I did. I did this critical analysis of Priscilla and the Wimps, which we all read together in class. Now the first step in paragraph 1 was to come up with an introduction, a thesis statement, and an introduction, some background information, and then a thesis statement. Okay, so my hook right here was Priscilla Roseberry has got your back. I said that was a good kind of hooking somebody in and getting them interested in what I'm going to say. Next is my background. So in the story Priscilla and the Wimps, the main character Priscilla is described as humongous and stands up to a gang of bullies led by Monk Clutter. In the end, Priscilla gives the bully what he deserves. So in that part right there, I've just given you a quick little rundown of what happened in the story. I told you two of the characters, and I told you the main kind of conflict and resolution of the story. Now I'm on to my thesis statement. This, remember, I got from page 348. You can just kind of find that little recipe, if you want to call it that, in your book. So this sentence, this story, written by Richard Peck, is a high-level comedy that uses comic situations and wordplay to convey the idea that good can triumph over evil. Okay, so now hopefully you see here that we've got three different elements in this sentence. It's our thesis, so this is what our whole essay is going to be about. So the first idea is that it's a high-level comedy. So that's going to be our first body paragraph. Okay, so that's one. That uses comic situations and wordplay to convey the idea that good can triumph over evil. So comic situations would be the next body paragraph, and then wordplay would be the next body paragraph. And then finally, we're going to talk about this good triumphing over evil kind of throughout, but at the end, just like a conclusion does, we're going to tie all of the pieces together and show how the author proved this point, or kind of got this idea across to us through using comedy. Okay, so that was a real quick little first introduction paragraph. So now we're going to talk about, because I said in this order, a high-level comedy. So what I did, just like you did on your graphic organizer, I looked at that activity 5.8, and I looked at what was the difference between high comedy and low comedy. And as I was doing that, I said, well, the subjects in high comedy are a little bit different than what you see in low comedy. The purposes, what the author wants us to do or how he wants us to respond to it, are also different in high versus low comedy. Okay, so looking at that graphic organizer, you kind of have some good ideas that you can play off of there. So here's what I did with it. This comedy can be classified as high level when looking at the subjects and purposes and intended responses of the material. So I've given you three ideas there, three kind of things I'm going to talk about through this paragraph. Okay, the author of the story seeks to do more than simply entertain the audience, but seeks to persuade us and take a stand against bullying by helping others. Okay, so that was the purpose, the author's purpose in writing this, and that's a purpose of high comedy. Okay, you can see that right in the activity in your book. The social problem of bullying that is conveyed through the story also points to the fact that the humor is intended to be high level. He's looking for this kind of, social action that he wants us to take, and that always points to high comedy. And then additionally, the humorous writing produces no loud, riotous outburst types of laughter, but instead provides grins, smiles, and even smirks at the antics of the characters in the story. Okay, so looking back at my topic sentence, I've said that it's high level because we looked at the subjects, purposes, and intended responses of the material. So each sentence I gave you in here gave a little bit of evidence about the subject, the purpose, and the intended response of the material. Okay, Looking at the next paragraph, so back to our thesis statement, it said that I was going to, let's see, so we talked about high comedy, so this one will talk about comic situations, and then the next one will talk about wordplay. Okay? Oh, except for it looks like I did it backwards. Shame, shame, shame. Here we go, but I did wordplay first here. The author uses a great deal of wordplay throughout this humorous narrative to demonstrate good triumphing over evil. Now, you would have noticed all this wordplay when you did your first initial reading of this story. And you've made more notes in the margins, and you found like all these funny things that you're going to include in your essay, okay? And then you just kind of plug them in as you write it. So that's why the pre-writing step is so important. So here we're talking about wordplay. In this section, the author hints that Monk, the revered bully, will have trouble with Priscilla. Okay, so I've introduced my quote, and now I'm going to give you the quote. The school was Monk's Garden of Eden. Unfortunately for him, there was a serpent in it. Okay, so I've given you the introduction, I've given you the quote, now I'm going to go ahead and give you the analysis of it. The author's witty use of the terms Garden of Eden and serpent forced the reader to compare the characters' situation with those of the famous Bible story of Adam and Eve. Okay, so I'm telling why that's witty. It's witty because you had to understand that Garden of Eden was Adam and Eve, and that the Garden of Eden was a paradise for Monk, but it turns out not to be. Additionally, the author uses clever puns to demonstrate that the character Priscilla will conquer Monk. So here's another one of my examples in quotation marks here. Priscilla was sort of above everything. In this double meaning pun, the author asserts two things: that Priscilla is taller than all others, and that she doesn't waste her time with people like Monk and his gang. Okay, one thing that I am now noticing that I should have done was to include the page numbers where I found these quotes. That's how we quote things, and I am horrible for not doing that. But please remember, you when you direct quote something, you put the page numbers in there. Okay. Okay, so that was our third paragraph. And here's our next body paragraph. Okay, so in this one we're going to talk about comic situations. Notice the transitions I use here. So I'm transitioning from what I was talking about to what I'm going to talk about. So I kind of give a little shout out to what I just said, but move it right along to what I want to say next. So I said, besides masterful wordplay in this passage, so kind of a shout out to what was in the last paragraph, the author also uses comic situations to show that mean people often get what they deserve. The comic situation involved the girl denying she had any knowledge of the school's bully, and after a calm confrontation, comically shoves him into a locker, closes the door, then walks away. So I've just given a quick little synopsis, a quick little summary of what happened in that comic situation. Okay? You have to kind of tell it for your reader so that they understand why it's funny. Okay? Visualizing that scene and its aftermath left the reader smirking in satisfaction, knowing that the person who had caused so much anguish to so many people through physical beatings and taking lunch money had been dealt with so matter-of-factly. Okay, so I talked about, in this sentence, I talked about how my reaction to the humor, that I was smirking in satisfaction. That was a reaction. Smirk. Okay? Priscilla was a hero, yet didn't carry herself in a way that drew attention, despite her deed. I'm already thinking there's ways I would improve this if I went back to revise it, but this was just my quickie version, so bear with me. Alright, now I'm back to my fifth paragraph. I have talked to you, I'm looking for the thesis here. Okay. High-level comedy uses comic situations, we talked about that. Wordplay, we talked about that. And then conveying the idea that good can triumph over evil. This is where I'm going to wrap it all up, and I'm going to give you this thought again and talk about how effectively the humor was used to show that good triumphs over evil. So in the last paragraph here, the universal truth that Richard Peck puts forth is that evil will eventually lose to the forces of what is good. I reworded it so it didn't sound kind of like I was being so repetitive. Peck relies heavily on wit throughout the piece to get his point across. Priscilla herself gets through the situation by using a combination of her wit, by not giving the bully attention, and her physical strength, which she uses to control the bully. The narrator's high-level humor and witty dialogue fit perfectly with the character of Priscilla and her actions toward Monk. The author's high-level comedy, combined with comic situations and plenty of wordplay, effectively get across the universal truth, and that you shouldn't mess with Priscilla Roseberry. Okay, so what I did there is I gave you the universal truth. I talked about the key element of humor, which was the wit, and I kind of compared it to, even though the narrator was giving this commentary, that Priscilla herself handled herself that way, with like her wits in these situations, which is why it fit so well together and it got the point across rather perfectly. Okay, and then again, just kind of a little tie-in to what I said at the beginning as my hook. Okay, just kind of some quick little comical thing at the end, and that you shouldn't mess with Priscilla Roseberry. That kind of goes along with my beginning hook statement that Priscilla Roseberry has got your back. So hopefully you understand a little bit more. If you need to watch this again or watch different parts, I hope you do. So take care.